Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Centerville Grace podcast, where every single week we do our very best to help you, our church family, dive deeper into community. I'm here with the whole crew, albeit virtually, but in the same building. So I'm Tony.
I'm Dusty.
And I'm Dave.
Nailed it.
Close.
We didn't even rehearse that. All right, what's going on, guys? What have you guys been up to? How's the week? What are you prepping for?
We are prepping for Christmas. It is coming fast. We're excited about it. The whole team's on board, all hands on deck. We got a lot of great stuff coming up, and looking forward to it.
Gus, what about you? What do you got going on?
The same, man. We to be honest, I didn't hear the sermon this week because during both services we were up there in the studio room recording Christmas videos for the kids, because it just made the most sense to do that when everybody's here on site. So it's just full on Christmas mode, just like Dave said. So we're in it, man.
That's great. Yeah, we're in the same boat, like prepping for Christmas, getting everything ready. My college kid comes home tomorrow. I'm wearing a tie today to support my wife. She every year she wears a dress every day in the month of December to raise money and awareness about human trafficking. And so a couple days throughout the month of December, I'll pick a day or two and I'll wear a tie in solidarity with her. And so super just humbled by her tenacity around this idea and glad to be on this journey with her. So that's why I'm sporting the Christmas tie today, which, by the way, I don't know if you can see it or not. Christmas trees is what I got going on there.
Looking sharp.
When's the last time you put on a tie, Dave?
Probably at the last funeral I did.
Dusty, what about you?
Actually, yeah, same. Last funeral.
Yeah, I don't wear them that often either. So
Yep.
It's a lost start.
For
Which
sure.
I'm okay with not wearing a tie.
Can you guys believe that we're almost done with the Gospel of Luke? How are you guys feeling? This Sunday coming up will be our last Sunday in the Gospel of Luke. Dusty, what have you learned about yourself and the Gospel of Luke this year?
Oh, about myself, man. I learned that I can stick with something for an entire year if I'm forced to. So that was good. So yeah, tenacity is not my strong suit. So as we've kind of learned from some of our staff training sessions lately, but no, it's been a lot of fun. It's I don't know if I've never spent that much time in Luke before. I do know that, especially for a long period of time. So I feel like I've been able to live into those passages and stories quite a bit more, which is always valuable to kind of slowly walk through those moments captured in Jesus's life.
Dave, what about you?
Yeah, I would say this is the longest book that I've ever done in one sermon series preaching. So it's been good. The outsider in Luke, I've known about it, but to really sit in it for a whole year of just thinking about how Jesus goes out of his way throughout the gospel to reach those who are marginalized, those who are oppressed, those who have nothing to offer, at least on the surface. It's amazing how much he does that. And so it really is convicting on to me personally, is how much connection do I have with the outsider? How much am I going out of my way for them and building a bridge from the outside in? So
that's good. I think for me, one of the things I was, I just really appreciated being able to follow the story along in Luke's gospel compared to the other gospels. Because I'm doing my regular study anyway, and so being able to kind of match the two together has been fun. So becoming kind of spending a lot of time there, almost I want to say an expert, but someone who's really spent some time in Luke was fun. So speaking of Luke, maybe we should get to the text this week. Tell us where we are in the Jesus narrative, Dave, and then we can jump into the text.
Yep. So last week we looked at the time Jesus had with Pilate as far as his trial, and how Pilate over and over declared his innocence of Jesus, but because of the crowds just pressure, Pilate caves in and says, fine, have Jesus, and do what you want with him kind of thing. And so they want him crucified. And so that's what Pilate gave into. And so now Jesus is being led out of the city up to Golgotha to be crucified. So that's where the story picks up. So we're in Luke 23, and we're going to start in verse 26. This is the ASV version. For those who are following along, this is just one of the versions they have here so that we can put it on the screen. So here's what it says. When they led him away, they laid hold upon one Simon of Cyrene, coming from the country, and laid on him the cross to bear it after Jesus. And there followed him a great multitude of the people, and of women who bewailed and lamented him. But Jesus, turning unto them, said, Daughters of Jerusalem, weep not for me, but weep for yourselves and for your children. For behold, the days are coming in which they shall say, Blessed are the barren, and the wombs they never bare, and the breasts that never gave suck. Then shall they begin to say to the mountains, Fall on us, and to the hills cover us. For if they do these things in the green tree, what shall be done in the dry? And there were also two others, malefactors, led with him to be put to death. And when they came unto the place which is called the Skull, there they crucified him, and the malefactors, one on the right hand and other on the left. And Jesus said, Father, forgive them, and they know not what they do. And parting his garments among them, they cast lots. And the people stood beholding, and the rulers also scoffed at him, saying, He saved others, let him save himself, if this is the Christ of God, his chosen. And the soldiers also mocked him, coming to him, offering him vinegar, and saying, If thou art the king of the Jews, save thyself. And there was also a superscription over him, This is the king of the Jews. And one of the malefactors that were hanged railed on him, saying, Art not thou the Christ? Save thyself and us. But the other answered, and rebuking him said, Dost thou not even fear God, seeing thou art in the same condemnation? And we indeed justly, for we receive the due reward of our deeds, but this man hath done nothing amiss. And he said, Jesus, remember me when thou comest in thy kingdom. And he said unto him, Verily I say unto thee, today shalt thou be with me in paradise. And it was now about the 6th hour, and darkness came over the whole land until the 9th hour, the sun's light failing, and the veil of the temple was rent in the midst. And Jesus, crying with a loud voice, said, Father, into thy hands I commend my spirit. And having said this, he gave up the ghost. And when the centurion saw what was done, he glorified God, saying, Certainly this was a righteous man. And all the multitudes that came together to this sight, when they beheld the things that were done, returning, smiting their breasts, and all of his acquaintance and the women that followed with him from the Galilee stood off afar, seeing these things. Whew, okay.
Rolls off the tongue.
So that's I think that's a good exercise of like, this is a different translation that we normally use. And that is a lot more wooden than we like. Yeah, we can get into that.
Helpful or not, we don't know.
We don't know, but it followed along with what we had. Not helpful. That's why I don't use verses like this, or passages like this, translations, because it's just so hard to read. It's words that we don't use anymore. I know maybe some would argue it's closer in some ways to how the Greek is read, word for word in the Greek sentence, but it's so wooden, it's so hard that it just doesn't help.
Is there a right translation?
A right translation? I would say, and this is a discussion I had at last night's life group for those who are listening. Thanks for inviting me to the life group to talk about this. When the Bible was written, it was written Hebrew in the Old Testament, Greek and Aramaic in the New Testament. But if you try to take that word for word and match it with a sentence, we don't write English the way like the Greeks wrote Greek. So you have to do some word changes, put some words in front of the others. And then you have the whole, okay, I know what this word sort of means in the Greek, or we're pretty sure what this means in the Greek, but we don't usually either use that word, or it's hard to do a one-to-one correlation between the Greek word and the English word. And so you have to do a little bit of paraphrasing to make it work. And then you have context within that translators have to understand, well, this word sometimes means this, but in this context, it certainly couldn't mean that. So what other ways could this word be used within the context? And so it's a whole art form, and there's different translations as a result of scholars either trying to do more of a one-to-one correlation or more of an easier read for others. So,
and then when you're talking about the New Testament too, you also have to talk about the Septuagint just a little bit.
Well, I mean, the Septuagint is the Old Testament from Hebrew to Greek, right?
Right. So, but then that would have been what Jesus, when Jesus quoted the Old Testament, he was quoting the Septuagint, is my understanding, in a lot of circumstances.
Yeah, so the Septuagint is used, yes. You're talking about, so in the New Testament quotations from the Septuagint, yes. Yep.
So that got real nerdy real fast.
Yeah, but I do like the way that you said it's an art form, right?
It is.
One thing I do hear from a lot of people, especially when they want to talk about Bible translations, is it's really easy to put it in a category of right translations and wrong translations, and it's a lot more art than science, right? So, like you said, we've got word for word translations, and we're trying to go through a number of different languages. There's a lot of passages in Hebrew and in Greek and in Aramaic that we don't have exact words for in English, because English is still a limited language compared to, we've got one word for love. And we know there's a lot of words for love in terms of the context of what that love is. And that's kind of the easy one. But, if I would just say, man, if that's a hill that, right now you might be kind of willing to die on, it is a really interesting historical exercise to work through how they got different translations and the process used and what the original texts were. And we've got a lot of resources right now that we didn't have hundreds of years ago when it comes to the Dead Sea Scrolls and the papyri that have been found. And it is fun to geek out on, but all within its proper place, right? The reality is we have everything that God desires us to have, and the Holy Spirit can speak through a whole lot of different translations as long as you are open to it as you're reading. And yeah.
And we are so rich. It's again, when I think about wealth, I think about options, and we have so many options when it comes to the different translations. I mean, if you have the YouVersion Bible app, there's 1,000,001 different translations you can use. We like to use NIV here at Grace on most Sundays. But if, for example, if I'm really kind of like wondering what is that word more precisely in the Greek, I can go to like an NASB or an ESV, and I would say that gives me a little bit more confidence. That's a more one-to-one to the Greek. But I don't use NASB because it's just a little bit too wooden for me on a Sunday morning to work through. But I also have like the New Living translation, or even the Message, that is a really, I think, just more of a commentary, one man's commentary on the Bible that I like to read just to get another angle at the text. So we have such a wealth of not just of the manuscripts that we have, but the translations that we have now is just fantastic, that we can go, okay, it's just a different kind of angle or take on maybe what was trying to be said.
Also, can we talk about the word malefactor? Can we? I just throw that out there. Has anybody heard that word? That was a new one for me.
Did you say No, I had never.
Malefactor. Yeah, it was in the translation we just read.
It was meant to be criminal, right? The criminal,
right?
Called malefactor. So malevolence and bad actors,
malfeasance.
Right?
I don't know.
Malfeasance. Yeah.
Now we're getting into etymology. I don't know.
I don't know. Well, Dave, one of the things that I appreciate that happened on Sunday morning as far as the sermon goes is that you kind of came up with 4 different S's to talk through where we're at in the text. So can you go ahead and revisit those?
Yep. So we looked at the 4 kind of I would say the 4 categories that we could put this whole story under. We looked at the Simon of the cross, where Simon of Cyrene carries the cross for Jesus, which is what a wild experience that would have been. Then we looked at the sadness of the cross, because as Jesus is walking through the city and out of the city, there's these women who are following, and they're weeping over Jesus. And then we have the sneering of the cross. That's the NIV translation. They were sneering at Jesus. So we have the sneering of the cross, and how beyond the women, the women were weeping, but everybody else seemed to be mocking and really just giving Jesus a hard time. And then finally, we have the significance of the cross, of why the cross is so important, and how the thief finally began to see the significance of what Jesus was doing, to the point where he could say, "Remember me when you enter into your kingdom."
when you're breaking down something so big, how do you come up with the alliterations like that? Do you have a creative process you want to share with the group?
I wish I could explain it. It's, I think the big theme was people don't understand the cross, right? And that's why Jesus prays, Father, forgive them, for they do not understand what they're doing. But then I'm just kind of looking at how things are moving, and I really don't. It just kind of comes to me. I don't have a great formula for it. I just was like, oh, I got a couple S's. Maybe I can make a couple more S's, and like, yeah, that works. And so it just kind of comes together.
Yeah, no, that's
Yeah.
good. That's what about your creative process? How do you, because I know for me, right, like I'm the kind of guy that's like, when I start, if I'm a little bit like Dave, when I find one or two S's, I'll hunt down the other two.
Yeah.
I just love
Pastors
some
really
good
like
alliteration.
pastors love alliteration, man. I know. I probably don't love it as much as you guys do. just for myself, or maybe I'm just, once again, I'm just not
Because you're
creative
cooler
enough in
than
that
us.
realm. No, I think it's just, well, I sat through a whole childhood of a lot of sermons. None of which were really as good as what we get here. But I don't know, man. I I'll be honest. I think as much about I guess the delivery of how things are going to come across as I do the content. It's like, if I'm going through building a sermon, which I don't do with the same regularity that you guys do. So I don't, I probably use a little bit different rhythm every time I do it, because it's a pretty good gap in between. I want to read the content. I want to make sure I understand the context of the content. And then to me, it's always the question of, man, what out of this will preach? Right. So what's the thing that, if Joe's walking into the church on Sunday from a long day of work, what's the thing that's actually going to make him want to think through what he's doing with his life and actually allow God to transform it or change something. Right. So I love like, I'm with you guys, man. I love living in the theological when it comes to, I want to know everything about it. Like, I love that. I geek out on that. I also just know that I'm one of the few people that would geek out on it. So when it comes down to, somebody who wants to take something from the sermon, man, it's like, I just want to know what are those few sentences at the end of the day that are really going to at least make somebody think as they're going about their week. Right. Because, most people don't live in biblical theology the same way that we do, because we're tasked with that as, overseers of the church. That's one of our jobs. But for most people, man, I think it's just a blessing to get them in the door, in the first place. And then it's like, man, what can we give them that's really going to make them think about what they are doing throughout that week, and where's the change agent in that?
Last week I asked you guys about your relationship with Pilate. I'm gonna follow up on that and get kind of personal.
You're double down on that question.
Well, yes. What's your relationship with the cross?
That's a totally different question there, buddy.
I know, but like at the same point, like it's the same lens, right? Because so now this is, I grew up in a really orthodox liturgical community, and we've talked about it now several times. And so much of my version of the cross has been the crucifixion, right? And so most of the crosses that I saw growing up had Jesus still on the cross. And so when I see it, I get both sorrow and hope, right? So for me, like when I see the cross, I see sorrow and hope. And that's kind of what I'd be curious when you guys think about it. What do you guys think? And now, full disclosure, I also happen to have one tattooed on my shoulder. So like it's just a real reminder for me.
Yeah, I'll take a stab at that. I'm so same as you. Like I've got my cross, right? Which,
Yeah.
when I got it, didn't realize that's a very Presbyterian cross, because I think that's like, if you look at a Presbyterian church's cross logo, they use that as, I think, part of, maybe it's PCUSA or something like that. That was not on purpose. It was just the way it all turned out. When I see the cross, I really think of, for me, a sacrifice, right? Because I always go back to that verse in my head of, pick up your cross daily. And it's the sacrifice of what Jesus did, not just for us, but also what's our sacrifice to doing something that's worthwhile in life. And, You can go a lot of different ways, I think, and this is another rabbit hole that we could go down. You can go a lot of different ways on what the cross really represents. There's a lot of people that would argue that the cross really represents kind of the barbarism of the time, and it's maybe not something that we should hold to as tightly as we do in Christian communities because it was really a tool of torture. And but I see it much more as like, man, it's a reminder of sacrifice, the way that Jesus picked up his cross and took it. And we are called to sacrifice something. If you're going to live a life worth living, especially us that follow Christ, like you're going to have to sacrifice something, and that weight is going to get heavy at some point. And so it's a reminder of just persevering and keep carrying it, man. Every single day, pick it up again and again and again.
Yeah, I would say for me, when I think about the cross, it's the place where I take my shame. I guess it's visually like I'm in my sin. I go back there, and I had to go back there and lay it down there. So it's a reminder that I'm forgiven. Jesus is going to take it. He took it already. But that's when I think of that, that's where I go to. So obviously the resurrection is the hopeful part of that. Like it doesn't, Jesus doesn't stay dead, and he's still not on the cross. I know that's a whole motif where Jesus is still on the cross, but he's not on the cross anymore. He's off the cross, and he's out of the grave, and he's sitting on the throne, and he's mediating for us, and he's but the place where I take my shame, my guilt stuff, I just give it to Jesus there.
Do you have any tattoos of crosses on your body?
Not that I'm aware of.
Not yet.
Not yet, and not, man. I just tattoos freak me out, man. I don't know. So, I just, if you have them, great, but I just nope. Needles and ink.
Dusty, what do you think? Should we pitch in and get Dave some tattoos?
Just a gift card. That'd be fun. I think we should just hold out and see if he gets some stigmata later, go the opposite route.
Yeah.
I'm not going to go into
also not a trailer
today.
It was a joke. I promise it was a joke.
Man. No, that's not my personality. I know. I'm just not a permanent ink kind of guy, but man, if that's you, great. Go for it.
You have to really not care. You have to really not care about the permanence of it, to be honest with you.
Yeah, that freaks me out, man. I'm like, I know I won't like this forever. So
I don't know if we're going to get the podcast before Christmas. And so I was curious because one of the really interesting things for me this season has been looking at the resurrection in light of the birth. I'm curious what your guys' reflections have been about that. I've noticed for myself that I have this deeper appreciation in this season for the birth of Christ, given how close we are to the resurrection, given that we're at the resurrection in the text, right? And so like it's this strange, and maybe it's just because, I've been doing this for a long time, that it's like I've never really spent the time to read the resurrection while also reading the birth narrative. I don't know. Dave, you've been writing messages around both of these topics for a while, working on your Christmas message while also working on finishing up the Gospel of Luke. What chords are being struck inside of you?
Well, I don't want to give too much away from my Christmas talk, but we are talking about the gift of Christmas Eve, and the whole idea, like just those words that he said to the thief on the cross. Today you'll be with me in paradise. That was the promise that he was giving this man, the hope and the gift of and his presence. That's to me, that's the theme of not just the crucifixion or rewinding the tape back to Christmas. I mean, that's the theme from start to finish, from Genesis to Revelation. It's the withness of God that he gives us, and that is the greatest gift ever. That we can't get anything better than that. And so in all circumstances throughout the scriptures, no matter what people are going to, God's like, I want you to know I'm with you. Like I'm with you. And that's enough. And that's more than enough to help you get through whatever you're getting through. So,
Dust, any thoughts from you?
Dude, I mean, I've got a lot of tension with Christmas myself. Just that's my
Counseling
Cross
session.
yeah.
the
Let's
bear.
get into it. Let's get into it.
Yeah, man. I don't yeah, so Christmas, like if you're gonna ask me, you know, where do I like to live when it comes to my faith, like Christmas is doesn't fall very high up on that list to me. Like I'm a resurrection, like we live in the resurrection, we live in Easter mode in terms of, you know, just the resurrection of Christ. Like that's where the power of the Christian life comes from. So going back at Christmas time, it's a love-hate relationship, man. I mean, I love the most important piece of Christmas is the Emmanuel piece. It is the God with us, God, you know, how God delivered his son to walk in human form, to take on human flesh, to you know, because he knew where that was going to go, but we needed a savior to come in the same form that we take. So there's something really powerful about that. It just happens that we celebrate that at the same time we celebrate all the nostalgia and all the cultural traditions of Christmas that comes with that. And you know, I don't know, man. It ends up being just a little bit distracting for me. Where does all that balance out? Because if we lived in the Emmanuel God with us all Christmas season long, I'd have no issue with it. It's just there's a lot else that comes culturally with the baggage of Christmas that makes it not my favorite time of the year. But that's, you know, like I said, it's just I put up with it every year. I will sing the Christmas carols when I have to. And if we
I
can't be
don't love
honest on the
Christmas
podcast,
either,
I don't know
guys.
where we should.
Honestly, I don't love it either.
But
It's a
it's a
lot.
pretty time of the
It's
year. Yeah,
so much. It's just so much, right?
it
It's a
it
lot.
is. It's yeah.
Yeah.
I just don't have a ton of great feelings around Christmas, just because to me it's a season of busyness and seems like a season we end up rushing through now more than we do kind of sit and reflect in it.
Yeah.
That's good. All right. So, what's your guys' prayer for the next couple of weeks in our church family? Right, there's going to be a lot of our church family will be listening to this podcast. They're going to think about a lot. I mean, there's like 40. What should they be praying as we head into the last couple of weeks of the year?
Two things. One, I would say if people could pray for a boldness to invite people to hear the gospel message on Christmas Eve, I think that would be great. As you mentioned, Tony, on Sunday, if you make the ask, you have a high percent chance to getting a yes.
It's like
So
84%, according to Carrie Newhoff.
that's insane. So we should, you know, if we had that kind of like as a lottery ticket or something, we'd be buying the lottery tickets. So like we need to be doing that. And I need to be doing that also. But the other thing is when I think about I'm praying that not just with me, but just I would say for all of our church to be really present with those that we love at Christmas time. And what does that really mean to be fully present, to be fully with somebody? My prayer is that happens, and that through that, Jesus' love is seen and experienced, and there's an attraction there to Jesus because we are so with other people and present with them and for them, and just absolutely in every shape of that word with them.
Thus, any prayer requests for the church as we head into this?
Yeah, I mean, I'll reiterate exactly what Dave just said, man. The power of being with someone as they walk through the Christmas season is so powerful. And yeah, invite them to church. Give somebody a reason to, you know, say, hey, I don't want you to just come here by yourself, but like I will save you a seat. I will be here with you the same way that God is with us. Like there's something powerful about that. And you know, you want to see a church grow, man. It is all about the power of the invite. Like more so than any of us can make anything happen. It's all about if you are willing to reach out to people that you know may say yes to coming to be a part of the community that we've got. That's amazing. And also maybe just to experience the nearness of God, right? So, you know, if Emmanuel really is God with us, what is it to sit and reflect and actually slow yourself down to feel a God that is near you, or at least who desires to be near you, right? We don't always feel it on our end, but a lot of times we don't give the space and the time to reflect and really to press into that. And I think that's something that God would have for all of us.
And I just pray that people slow down. Just slow down and be present. Unplug where they need to unplug from, and take the time to soak it up. whether that be on Sunday morning with, cinnamon rolls or whatever your tradition is, or Christmas Eve when we're holding those candles, being reminded that we too get to be the light of the world. So, Carlos Whitaker, a guy from the internet that I know, always likes to say, be a moment maker, and so just don't let it go by without making your moment count. So it's good.
Yeah.
Okay, Dusty, why don't you tell everybody what the plan is for the podcast for the next couple of weeks? Are we on as usual? We taking next week off and then coming back? How are we handling that? What should they know about, making sure that they subscribe and all the other things?
I mean, I feel like they should know that we should have talked about this by ourselves before asking on the podcast, but we're past that moment now. So it's really whatever you guys want to do, guys. I'm around. I'm just letting you know I'm here. I'm around. So I do know
okay.
the Christmas plan is, we are here through this week. We have services as normal on Sunday. Next week, we're hoping to, as long as you guys are game for it, getting a podcast in, but we have Christmas Eve on a Tuesday. So it's going to be a little weird. And then for us, the office is closed that next week. So listen, guys, I mean, if you guys just want me to jump online, I'll throw a little podcast together and we'll just have a little monologue moment. But if you guys are around, even better. But the most important thing is, throughout the end of the year, man, you can subscribe in a lot of different ways, right? You can check out the Facebook page where you can always see the video podcasts. If you want to subscribe to the podcast to get that in your algorithm, it's all through Podbean. I believe our URL is centervillegrace.podbean.com, if I remember that correctly. But yeah, I think for 2025 and looking forward into the next year, we're going to get into some more, topical themes, and we're going to be doing some new things as a church. And I think it's going to be a really exciting year. So if you have friends that haven't jumped on the podcast yet, especially if they're part of our community, that's a great time to invite them because, we believe God's always doing something new, and 2025 is going to be awesome. Can't wait.
Dave, closing thoughts?
Man, I really liked what you guys had to say with the idea of nearness and the slowdown and just the presence. I hope that happens. Hope people get some time off. Thank you to our volunteers who serve week in, week out, and put so much time into things especially like Christmas Eve. So I hope the break is restful, is some good time with your family, and can't wait for the start of next year. It'll be fun.
Yeah. Family, more than anything, we want you to know that you're not alone. So we're going to continue to come around our rally cry that no one walks alone. So until next week, we will see you guys real soon. Thanks for being a part of the podcast.